Okay, thank you all for coming to BBD Cloud Meetups for September/October because we got a bit delayed last week. So for, some of you might notice that today's meetup is a little bit different from what it usually is. So what kind of prompted this is we recently achieved an AWS migration competency, which is the next step into our journey to becoming an AWS Premier Partner. So I'm sure a lot of you don't know what that means. So what we're trying to do here is kind of touch base on where we are in the cloud at the moment and what our future is looking like. So we're lucky enough to be joined by some very important people today. We've got we've got Dieter, who actually pioneered our cloud journey at BBD. He chaired that first migration project back in 2016. And he's now the current head of cloud at BBD. Then we have Jaco joining us from Cape Town. And he's the executive at Mserv, and he kind of runs the whole AWS partnership. Then we have Tony and Russell, who need no introduction, but they can share a bit about our cloud journey from a business perspective, and give us a bit of information about how we're expanding globally. Is there anything you guys would like to say before we jump into things?
I did want to say something before we hand over to them.
Oh, before we hand over to Dieter. Okay, cool. In that case, we'll just discuss about how today's discussion is going to work. So I'll be throwing out some questions to specific panelists, but anyone can feel free to jump in at any time and lean in on any topic. And after our discussion is finished, we'll open the floor up to the audience. And we're so keen to hear what you guys have to say, questions or opinions, that we're going to be offering up some BBD bucks that you can use next week at Escape on our Hive swag store. So that's quite exciting. So then I guess I'll jump right off and kick off with a bit of context surrounding our current cloud advisory offerings. So Dieter, you were in charge of that first. Before you do that, okay.
Yes, before you go there. I just wanted to give some background and a bit of history. I mean, in the past, the big software vendors, the IBM, Microsoft, Oracles of the world, they all wanted to partner with us or us to partner with them. And what that meant to them is we sell their software, which for them makes sense because we build application systems which run on their operating systems and store data in their databases. But that's not what we do. We don't go around flogging people's software. And also, we don't want to be beholden to their KPIs. Along comes the cloud providers. And now AWS comes to us and says, we want you to be our partner. And we say, well, what do you want us to sell? And they say, well, nothing. All you need to do is get your clients to put their workloads on our cloud. And what's more, we prefer them to be cloud native. Now, our day job is building cloud native application systems. We just do it in our sleep. So it's a bit of a no-brainer when AWS is now bringing clients to our door saying, these guys know what they're doing. Get them to build your application system on the cloud for us. So this makes a much more sense to us.
Yeah, okay, cool. So, okay, so we'll jump in with a bit of context surrounding where our journey started. So Dieter, with that first migration that you did in 2016, how did that opportunity come about, and how have our cloud offerings changed since then?
Okay, so maybe to just quickly take a step back to sort of 2014, 2015, 2016. At the time in South Africa, when you said cloud, no one was talking AWS, no one was talking Google, no one was talking, Azure didn't exist, okay? What counted as cloud in South Africa, if you went to one of the cloud sort of trade shows, it was either an Oracle trade show or it was an IBM trade show, and what they sold you was a box that you put in your data center, and you plug in water on the one side for cooling, you plug in power and you plug in network, and it runs a bunch of apps. So it's got Oracle pre-installed, it's got ESB or EBS, Oracle EBS, their enterprise business suite pre-installed. That was cloud. So you put on this box, and the idea was it's modular. You can put down 10 or 20 or 30 of them, depending on the size of your data center. But no one was talking, put your workloads in someone else's data center. And the main reason for that was none of us had fiber. We had ADSL. Even between our offices, we had ADSL. So there wasn't any networking, and there was no way you were going to get a workload in Ireland or in London to be responsive back to South Africa. So if you spoke to a bank in South Africa and you said, well, cloud, they just said, never. We will never go off-prem. We want security. We want, they call it the smarty model. You have this tough exterior and then you have a soft inside. That's what we want. We like our data centers on-prem, and that's what we will run in. So if you went to ABSA, you went to Standard Bank, it didn't exist. And they absolutely just said never. It will never work in South Africa. We don't trust it. We don't want it. So I got a call from an old colleague that worked with me probably about 15, 20 years ago. And he said, look, I'm the CEO of a new company, or of an existing company, but I'm the new CEO. And we've got an offering in the online gambling gaming sector. So what we do is we provide software to bookmakers, so to people who take the bets and then pay out the players, the punters. And what we do is we install this on-prem in the environments, but we've got a couple of 100 clients, and this is impossible to maintain. And it's 20 years old. It was written in VB6. It was running on SQL Server. It doesn't scale. What can we do? So Tony and I went down, and we went down for about 4 or 5 days. We first did a health check to look at what they had, with the idea maybe we give them some people, we take the VB6 code, we convert it to C#, and probably about 2 days in, we realized this is never going to work. It's just not, it's too old, it's reached the end of its life, it can't be done. So they said to us, what do you propose? And we said, well, microservices and, run on Linux. And they said to us, have you considered cloud? And we said, well, we've researched it a bit, but it's not a big thing in South Africa, and your market is South Africa. And they said, no, we're in Cape Town, and we've dealt with AWS in Cape Town. We've spoken to them, and we think this is an option. What do you think? So Tony and I said, well, let's have a look. And we started looking into it, and the more we looked into it, and also at the time, bear in mind, cloud was not what we know today. If you said cloud in South Africa, like I said, either on-prem or at best you had Google App Engine, which is effectively you write a bunch of code in a certain format and you upload it, and then they magically host it for you and they give you a database, and it just works. So we looked at AWS and we went, interesting, and then we looked a bit further and we went, okay, very interesting. And the more we looked, we realized this has massive potential. And then we met with, at the time, AWS had a data center or a development center in Cape Town with about 1,500 people, which was kind of a well-kept secret. No one actually, people knew about it, but no one really paid attention to it. And we met with them, and then from there, we kind of realized that not only is this a thing, but South Africa is on that cusp where we're now going to either, well, our networks are going to catch up, and suddenly this is going to be the future. So that's a really long-winded way of saying we then worked with a client, and we said, okay, this is an option. And we didn't have any skills. There were no skills in the country. At the time, there were 2 SA solution architect professional certified guys in the country outside of AWS. So there was basically no one. So at the time, we had a young guy working for us, Werner Mostert, very smart young kid. So he and I looked at this and he said, well, we've got to get certified in this. We've got to figure it out. So we then got certified. We did our solution architect associate. We immediately did our SA Pro. So we were about number 3 or number 4 or 5 in the country with SA Pro. And then we helped Turf Sport, the client, deploy this into AWS. And then through that, AWS said to us, but why don't you join our partnership program? And as Russell said, usually what that meant was you need to pay us a bunch of money and then you get to sell our product. And we just said, no, we're not interested. And they said, no, it doesn't work like that. We want you to just get people to use our cloud. You don't have to sell anything. We'll do all the selling. But what we will do is when clients come to us, we will tell them that you are the guys who can do the work because you've proven it to us. And we started that journey. And at the time, 2016, that was our first project. Like I said, no one was certified. The first year, we didn't get a lot of certifications. We got about 5, maybe 6. Most of them actually from myself and Banner, a couple of guys from ATC, and 1 or 2 early adopters in some of the bigger teams that they had some capacity. But it didn't really, it took a little while. And then about 2017, 18, bit bigger. And then the last sort of 18 months probably is when we've really exploded. We've got over 200 certifications now. We've got petabytes of client data in the cloud. We've got, last count, probably about 20, 25 projects in cloud that I'm aware of. Probably a lot more in sort of smaller areas of the client that I'm not aware of, but it's grown pretty much exponentially over the last 18 months.
Awesome. Yeah, so that's great. So you were speaking a bit about how you and Tony first looked at the cloud and you said, okay, maybe we should start getting on that. So Tony, from a business perspective, how has BBD's business strategy changed, or how has it developed since the beginning, and where is it going in the future?
I think it's partially going to pass the mic to Russell as well, because most of it was actually his fault. And it was a good fault, by the way. And Russell said one day, and I can still remember it like it was yesterday, that what we don't realize right now is that a lot of our clients are starting to do this. It's becoming a thing. And if we don't start to look at this as a business enabler for our clients, we are going to miss the point. Remember that?
Yeah, I remember saying to you and Peter Searle that we're behind the times. I discovered that the British government a decade ago had decided on a cloud-first strategy. And the reason we were behind in South Africa is because we didn't have cloud in our geography. And inherent conservatism in our clients prevented them from going to the cloud. So because it wasn't mainstream for us here, we didn't learn it.
Yeah, and the point was not to, or the primary point was not to start up a Mserv and actually drive the work that we do out of Mserv, but it was to make sure that our clients that do join us, that are able to just obviously move their things onto the cloud. And I think what we sort of discovered during those early days is that there's this extra bit of work or the service that we can add on top of just the enablement that will make our clients' lives easier, because none of them knew at that stage, and a lot of them are far behind with understanding what it's all about, how to manage it, how to move your workloads into the cloud. Yeah, I mean, like Jaco's hopefully going to talk about some of the work that we've done. It's been an amazing journey.
Yeah, exactly. So on that, we speak a lot about Mserv and MPS, but a lot of people don't actually know what kind of work those teams actually do and why they're different. So maybe Jaco and Russell, can you guys take us through what those teams do on the ground?
I'll start and I'll hand over to Jaco. Going back into the dark distant past again, when we delivered software, we delivered it to a team called Ops, who corralled their hardware behind barricades to prevent us devs from getting anywhere near them. And so we would build our software and then throw it over a fence, and they would deploy it and run it. And when it broke, they would phone us at 2 a.m. With the advent of cloud now, and us being able to provision infrastructure in the cloud using code, the ops people are starting to become a bit obsolete, and managing infrastructure has come more into our domain. Obviously, managing infrastructure through source code is inherently more complex than doing it manually, and it's a lot easier for a dev guy to learn the infrastructure rather than an ops guy to learn how to code. So hence, we have Mserv now, which we started, myself and Tony, and we pulled Jaco in. We poached him from one of our competitors to run it for us. Whereby now we can provide services to our clients where they manage their infrastructure in the cloud and manage the source code that spins it up, tears it down, because inherently they don't have that capability themselves. Jaco?
Yeah, I agree. So I think it's just to confirm, can everyone hear me?
Yes, you can.
Okay, fantastic. So to just extend on the one component there is that, like Russell said, a lot of our customers just don't have the ability to actually go and deploy infrastructure, and let alone actually go and manage that infrastructure or that environment once it's deployed. Cloud is it's same but different to what they've always been doing on-prem. There's still security, there's still backups, networking, etc. But it's done a little bit differently. And while a lot of our customers are going through this journey to enable themselves, get the necessary skills, we as an organization see the benefit in cloud, and we want to deploy workloads or deploy applications and systems that we build in the cloud. But if the customer isn't in a position to go and build that environment securely or operate it in an effective way, it's going to impact the way that we actually deliver our systems and our solutions to those organizations at the end of the day. So Mserv plays quite a big enablement role in that process. So it's enabling the customers and their organizations in the short term, sort of as a stopgap, if I can call it that, to get them going in the short term, enable them in the longer run, eventually until such time that they can take on that responsibility of maintenance and management and so on, and we just help them on the journey. Yeah, I think that's just what I wanted to add.
Can I add to that? Because you started by mentioning MAP in the beginning. MAP is a program called Migration Acceleration Program that AWS has, where they help their clients to migrate to the cloud, and they'll use service providers like ourselves to do that migration and hopefully modernize their application as well. But AWS will fund the cost, or at least some of that cost, to do that migration. So it's a bit of a win-win situation for us when we go to the client and say to them, we'll take you to the cloud, but AWS is going to pay for it, or at least pay for our services, which makes it a lot more compelling argument.
Yeah. So AWS has this big partner network. What actually is the partner network? Maybe Jaco or even Russell. Probably Jaco is a better person to ask. No offense, Russell. What is the AWS Partner Network, and where do we fit into it as a company, and where do we see ourselves going?
So for a little bit of background, so AWS have the Amazon Partner Network, is what it's called, and it's ultimately a program designed to validate partners, organizations like ourselves, implementation partners, and through meeting certain criteria, we get a tier designation. So you start off as being a registered tier, a registered partner. Then as you gain certifications and experience and capability, you start moving up the various tiers. So the tiers are, that AWS have is the registered tier, select tier, advanced tier, and then premier. So currently BBD is defined as an advanced tier AWS partner. In South Africa at this point, there are no premier partners. And I think there's about 25 but let's say less than 50 globally that are defined as premier partners. We heavily on the journey to obtain our premier tier by obtaining our migration competency that we received last month. That was the last tick in sort of our requirement list to get to premier. We have to go through a 6-month validation process where we need to continue meeting all of our requirements for premier for the next 6 months. And if so, then we get our badge, which is awesome. And why I think a lot of you might wonder, why is this program important, and why does it actually play a role in our business? I think probably one of the most key things out of it is the validation component. When we go to one of our customers and they want to go to the cloud, it'll make sense for them to work with an organization that has been validated through experience, through certifications, etc. Because I'm sure there are a lot of businesses out there that have capability and they can do it. But in order to get these competencies that we've achieved, and just as by the way, we have two. We have the DevOps competency and the migration competency, which is a lengthy audit process to actually get. We did get the DevOps one. I think we spent all in all 12 hours in an audit with a third party where they validate our processes, how we deploy, the patterns we follow, and whatever else. And we now have the ability to go to a customer and say, this is what we had to do to get this competency. So they can be rest assured when they select us as their implementation partner that how we do things have actually been validated, and we're not just sort of thumb sucking our processes and so on. And that's why these programs make sense, or why they actually play a key role. It gives our customers sort of that sense of, cool, I'm working with people who know what they're doing. But then additionally, when we engage in a new geography like Europe, etc., we already stand out there through our experience that we've gained in South Africa. We're already stepping into those geographies as experienced partners, and organizations in those markets definitely know what all of these different programs mean, and they look out for it. So it makes us a little bit more marketable as well. I'm going to stop there because it feels like I'm just going to continue talking for like another 20 minutes.
You could talk about this for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, something just to add there. So you get, as Jaco said, you get different levels of partner, but you also get different types of partners. You get technology partners in AWS, you get, I forget all the others, but we registered as a consulting partner, which is by far the hardest. If you're a technology partner, effectively you just deploy a couple of small solutions, but it's a lot easier to get through the levels, to go from standard to select to advanced. If you do a consulting partner, it's the most difficult partnership to get. You have to have actual hands-on deployment experience, running experience. It's not, if you're a little startup, you can register as a partner. That's a totally different type of partner than what we are. So the sort of companies that we compete with in that space are the Accentures of the world, the Boston Consulting Groups of the world. It's really big. I mean, Accenture is 200,000 people worldwide, I think. Okay, they've got a 26,000 person, what do they call it, like a development center in India with 26,000 people just in India. So they're massive. That's the sort of company that we are competing with in that space. And then maybe the second thing is on these validations for the competencies, what they force, it was good for us as well, because what they force us to do is to actually go through our processes and make sure everything is documented to a very high standard, because you have to show this documentation to the auditors. So they ask you, where are your run books and your playbooks for when something goes wrong? How do you recover from a disaster? What did you put in place? What did you tell the client to do, the customer? Are your people skilled up in this? Do you actually have you deployed in production actual Terraform workloads of this scale? Or are you just showing us demo apps? And you have to show them the actual real life high volume transaction systems that we've deployed using this. And then they go, oh, okay, you've actually really done this. You're not just saying it. So as Jaco said, I think it was a 12-hour session. It was two days of 6 hours each, where we sat with this auditor, and you take him through your physical code, you take him through your physical documentation, he asks you questions on the fly, and you have to be able to answer, oh, that's how it would work, you would need to do that, etc. So it's not just a paper you fill in, it's an actual exam effectively.
So actually a bit on that, and on the topic of exams, and how the number of certified people contributes to our relationship with these cloud providers like AWS. This is a good question for Tony from a training and enablement perspective, but what is the importance of people in our company becoming certified? Who should get certified, and why should they get certified? And why does it make sense for our engineers and people in the business to just upskill in the cloud?
I love the question. It's a question that we ask often. When we talk about these not certifications, but these competencies and obviously the levels that we have to go through, one of the checkboxes to have a certain amount of certified people, because you need to show your competence. But for me, it's always been a lot more than that. I mean, we've been Microsoft partners for many years, and part of their partnership is also to have some level of certifications in the bank. When we went through those, in the early days as well, certifying people on those platforms, it was never for me about that certification, even though we do score a bit, in this case, obviously the levels that we need to maintain, but it's about remaining relevant. And a lot of the certifications that we encourage everybody to do are about understanding how to use these technologies in a real life situation. We are pretty good at what we do right now, but I don't think that we can continue just focusing on what we do right now. Things are changing and the cloud is real. Every single person is going to eventually need to be able to work in that environment. So the certifications are pretty good at explaining at least what the platform is about. And then when you do another one, how to develop in there, how to architect in there. And I would encourage absolutely every single one to not just look at doing some certification, but to start practicing it on the side, even if you're not engaged on a project. But it's not just about AWS. We're also talking about Microsoft and Azure. And hopefully pretty soon Google Cloud as well. And as Dieter mentioned, I mean, Oracle Cloud is there. All cloud, every big company's got some type of provider, which means that our clients will have a hell of a lot more to pick from. We need to make sure that we can still enable them, otherwise we will not be relevant. And I think that's the important point.
Yeah, and how is our skills demand changing from like employee perspective? What skills are we looking for in different?
It's not just in cloud. I mean, we're looking at the UX departments that we recently started up. We look at the changes that we're experiencing, and our clients are asking us a lot more than what we conventionally used to do, writing software. It's about those other things as well. The MPS. We're looking for cloud engineers, guys that are in love with actually starting up these environments and running workloads. It's not just anymore about just being pure devs. You want to add to that?
Yeah, obviously I was mentioning dev and ops before, and you've all heard the term DevOps, which is not about merging the two, but more of a philosophy of how you go about building your software and running it. The idea being is that you build it, you run it, which means you tend to be a lot more thorough when you design it, build it, test it, deploy it, because you don't want to be called at 2 a.m. in the morning. So it's a philosophy as well.